thousands of leaders annual conference. One is next week. It's already sold out. Mentoring groups, one-on-one coaching, as well as exclusive courses and workshops through the new campus platform. Community membership is free. So if you're leading a technology team, you should definitely get involved. And we huge thanks to our partner Vention, who is helping us make these Bytes events possible. I'll be your moderator today. I'm Francis Lacoste. I'm a former senior engineering leader at Heroku and Salesforce, and I'm now doing executive coaching with CTOs and VP of engineering, and particularly at the transition from the startup to the scale-up phase, when you need to grow your skills to, in addition of being a great product builder, you need to become a great organizational builder. And today, for helping us with develop our sales size, we are joined by Glyn Roberts, CTO of Digital Solutions at Vention, and to discuss strategies and best practices to understand your sales role as a CTO or technical leader. Glyn, can you tell us a bit about yourself and your experience first?
Sure, yeah. So great to be here at CTO Craft Bytes. I'm Glyn Roberts, and as mentioned, I'm CTO of Digital Solutions at Vention. I've been in the technical industry for almost 20 years now, started off through the engineering path, so very much a techie and coder at heart. And yeah, essentially the purpose of me being here today is to try and talk about the sales element, which isn't really discussed as much as part of leadership and CTO roles. So great to be here, and great to talk with you, Francis.
Thank you. People in the audience, you can add your question at any time using the Ask a Question link that you'll find below the video. And we'll cover these during the discussion. So keeping an eye on question and fire away your questions. So let's talk about sales as part of the CTO role. So first, Glyn, tell me, how was sales part of your career?
Sure. So I think I consider myself quite lucky. So when I first started like 19, 20 years ago as a developer, I was actually, part of my role was actually sales. So back then you didn't have all these fancy frameworks. You didn't have all these really complex microservices. It was much more flat structure. So you were the front end developer, you were the back end developer, you were deploying the application, you were doing the project management and even talking to the client. So in my first role that I did for the first 3.5 years, I was very client facing, also doing all the development for like 3 or 4 companies. So I was working as a developer in an agency there. So it's a shame that that doesn't really exist in the same way now because of the separation of the different specialties. But that was the first real introduction into the technical sales part, having to talk to the client about what they want and obviously providing good solutions and obviously trying to make sure they stay with you as a business to obviously continue moving forward. Continuing on, I've been a co-founder of a business. So obviously during that time, we were talking to different seed and angel investors. So therefore sales is a big part of that. Normally engineers are a bit blunt. You've got to soften that down a little bit when you talk to angel investors. It's like, so how bad is the code base? Oh, it's terrible. It's not a great answer. You can just need to go one step better than that and say, there's room for improvement, but it works. Then you've got, C-level positions. So I've had several CTO level roles in my career so far. In those cases, you normally have to talk to the CEO or mostly the board. So therefore, there is definitely a sales aspect there to make sure that the board are confident with what you as a technology organization are actually doing as a business. So I definitely consider a sales aspect there. And in my current role, because I'm in a development agency, which is Vention, I'm very heavily involved in pre-sales activities. So therefore sales becomes a more heavier function than I've done in previous roles where it was like more product focused. But still, there's a lot of experience and knowledge you get from the product side of things as well and being exposed to the sales side. Also, as part of the career in general, which I think is probably what most people are interested in, is like the leadership aspect. So, managing your team, managing upwards, or managing with different departments like sales, marketing, operations teams, legal teams. There's a heavy aspect of sales in the leadership role. Obviously, you need to back it up, but I think you need to be able to position yourself as you're part of the business in a certain way. Truthfully, of course, but obviously be able to sell it and make it understood from the rest of the organization. and especially when you want to try and get budgets for things like refactoring, it's very hard to get budget for something where they don't see a value in it immediately rather than a feature. So therefore, you have to be a pretty great salesman to get a good refactoring budget, I find, to other parts of the business to make sure that you do have the resources available to obviously move forward. And then as a final part of what I consider sales in my career is like getting a job or promotion. I know it can seem unfair, there's this constant mindset of, we don't want to hire ourselves as CTOs, people that we just like, people that we want to go to the pub with and hang around with, we want to be more unbiased. But there is a bias piece whenever there's face-to-face interviews or anything like that. So therefore, by having a little bit more of a sales approach, but to sell yourself, essentially. I know sales is a bit of a dirty word, which I'm sure we're going to talk about shortly. Mm-hmm. But being able to sell yourself, because no one else will, you need to be able to promote yourself in the right way, and that gives you the best opportunity. And it even goes the same thing with like personal relationships, a wife or partner. I can't just say, look, I'm an excellent coder and expect the women to come flocking to me. You need to be personable, you need to be likable. So therefore, there is an aspect of sales just to getting people to like you, want to spend time with you for just everyday relationships as well. So it all comes around, passion and what you want to do. And luckily, all the businesses I've worked in, I've always been very passionate about the type of work I'm doing. So therefore, I found it probably easier than some people might do. But that's how I've perceived my sales career so far.
Yeah, and it reminded me, you passed quickly, but a big part of what I remember is when we're hiring, I think having to sell the company to our prospective engineers, things like that. And listening to you, sales is pervasive, it's not just like selling to business, it's in all aspects of our role. So why does sales, if it's such pervasive, what does it get such a bad reputation?
The industry has a lovely way, even like movies, TV shows have a lovely way of portraying sales in a very negative way. I think the old school way, probably before my time, of the industry and sales is, like Mad Men. You've got Only Fools and Horses with Del Boy. You've got The Wolf of Wall Street. It's all very cutthroat, aggressive, pushy tactics to get people to spend money, give you cash, and then therefore you're a successful salesperson.
Yeah,
that's not really what sales is. That's just cheating people out of cash. So that's not what I'm trying to talk about here. And I think a lot of people have come across difficulties where they've been sold to unfairly. Like if you ever tried to buy a secondhand car, that's always a horrible place to be, because you've got a price, you need to negotiate. And if it doesn't come natural, if you haven't gone through that process before, it's a very horrible experience. Going, am I getting cheated out? Am I losing out a lot of money? I remember being in Thailand where every time people are trying to sell you stuff in the markets, you don't just negotiate like 10% lower, you go 50% lower and see what they have to say about that. So it's, you don't know where you stand. You don't know what the rules are, because each industry has their own different rules of what's unacceptable. And you don't want to be perceived as a horrible person by trying to over negotiate, say, oh, that's ridiculous, asking for 50%. I hate that person. So there's definitely a negative connotation behind sales for especially people in the engineering industry, just because they're not really exposed in the same way as people that are more heavily in the client-facing side of the business.
So besides just like the bad reputation it has, any other reason you think people avoid being part of the sales process?
Definitely from my experience, from my industry, from the engineering side of things, firstly, everybody knows sales is a cutthroat industry. As an engineer, you don't want to be the sales guy, because if you don't hit targets, you're getting heavily measured, you're out the door. So it's not like engineering where you can provide value all the way through, and it's perceived value because you can see it. In sales, if you don't get the sale, you don't have anything. So you might have spent 2 weeks trying to work on one client, trying to make a sale. And if it doesn't come through, essentially you've done nothing for 2 weeks. So it's very cutthroat with the target setting there. So therefore people don't really want to be assigned to that, because obviously it's not that great. So people are very risk adverse, which makes a lot of sense, especially the way we've been educated and coming through. And most people have not sold before. So therefore, they haven't had any form of sales training or negotiation training. because I don't remember this being ever taught in schools or in university. There's been no education about how you go through approaching this. And there's also multiple other areas like sales is a bit of magic. You'll see that because salespeople are great at self-promotion, of course, because they're sales guys. They're I'm fantastic. This is why I won the client. I came in, gave them all the jazz. Bought them a couple of whiskeys, and they're now a client. It doesn't sound that appealing. And also, there's the aspect of being perceived as egotistical. I remember very early on when I was at university trying to get like a summer job in between my courses. There was like a group interview session. And, I went in hard to sell myself. So everyone was like saying what they've done, their experience and stuff. And I came along and was like, boom, I just super confident, put it on, of course, but super confident. This is what I've done. Coming out, one of the girls said, I didn't know you're so egotistical, Glyn. It's like, well, no, it's not egotistical. It's selling yourself. And, I got offered the job and she didn't. And it's purely just due to the way you are perceived from that perspective. And there's like a final point as well of why people avoid being part of the sales piece is that there's normally a large separation between the engineering product teams to the actual sales teams. So, the sales team could be easily perceived as rubbish. Oh, we're not hitting the company target, sales fault. It's easy just to put the blame on that side. So therefore, I don't want to be associated or be involved in, because then I'll be perceived as part of the low performing aspect of the business. Because our engineering team are delivering everything on time. Everything they ask us to do, we are delivering. But the sales are not delivering. And therefore, there's that perceived aspect of they're bad, where it's not really the case. It's more, that misalignment's not, that alignment's not there. So therefore, by being misaligned, they're struggling to sell appropriately, and the business isn't going to succeed if you haven't got both sides working successfully.
Yeah, collaboration with sales is critical to the success. So, okay, what as a CTO, what do I need to know about sales if I decide to engage?
Okay, so firstly, let's separate out the B2C to B2B side of things. So if you're B2C, just selling to consumers, you don't normally have a sales team. You have a marketing team. So therefore, it's pushing out marketing stuff from that perspective. I've mainly worked on the B2B side, so therefore you normally have both. You have both a sales and a marketing team working normally independently of each other. I found in a lot of businesses, there should be more collaboration and crossover. There is some, but I find there's still a bigger gap than I would normally expect in most businesses that I've worked in previously. So the first thing as a CTO is you need to understand what's actually going on from the way that sales sell your product or service, and the same way that marketing do as well. And for that, you need to understand how they view and actually measure their own success. So a standard business will have like their pipeline. They'll have like leads, which are, in other words, they'll get loads of leads. They'll then have MQLs, SQLs, ops, and accounts. So let me just quickly walk through each stage. The lead size is where they've just got your email address. So they may be searching around LinkedIn, finding out, searching for like CTOs that are in SaaS-based businesses, and our product's going to align to them. So therefore, they get a massive list of LinkedIn profiles that are associated to that type of profile. Yeah. You then, they could be getting you off events, you've attended events, signed up to newsletters, or any other ways that, they can get data. It's all about data mining, sucking as many people in as possible. From there, they then have extra tools to then work out what your email address is. And this really shocks me. There's like so many different businesses out there where you put in someone's LinkedIn address and it'll say, right, this is their address, this is their telephone number. This is all legal stuff that's out there. But yeah, a lot of data, data, PII data is not really protected because it's business data. So that's why here. So whenever I see these tools, first thing I'm doing is reaching out to them and say, right, remove my data, please. But yeah, so there's big tools like that. And then what they then do is put you into a cadence. So we'll probably all experience this, where they'll have, you'll get a first introduction. It's, hi, I'm so-and-so from this company. I want to, have a chat or, tell you more about our products. If you don't respond, you'll then get an automated email 3 days later, and then another, and then another. Yeah. And it's the same thing on LinkedIn messages, WhatsApp, and text. They're using tools like Apollo. So they have their process for generating leads and trying to get that first contact from you. So it's good to understand that that's what both marketing and sales teams do when they're talking about leads that are coming through into the business. So they'll come along and say, right, we've got 1,000 leads this month. So therefore, we've got 1,000 people's email addresses that we can contact. Then the next stage is going to MQL. So these are like marketing qualified leads. So therefore they'll have a criteria of saying, right, this lead does suit our business from a marketing perspective because they're in the SaaS-based industry or something like that. So it'll be a bit a higher level view of whether you match their needs, but you would have responded to them in some way. You would have said, hi, yes, can you tell me more, send me some information. Obviously, if you say no, delete me, then you're out of the pipeline completely. Then you go into the SQLs, which are sales qualified leads. So this is where a salesman has actually talked to you in person, or at least had an email communication. So therefore, this is normally validating you at a much closer level of saying, yeah, have you got budget? Are we the right type of business? Do you meet the business needs, the type of client that we want to have? So for example, we're agency. So therefore, by being agency for developers, do you have budget to hire our minimum number of engineers, be it 2 or 3 engineers? And are you asking for skill sets that we have? If you come along and say a skill set that I've never heard of and we don't have, then it's like, okay, that's not a sales qualified lead. So that you then turn into an opportunity where you then, going through negotiations, contracts, whether things really match, and then they become an account. So it's important to understand that pipeline, because as a CTO, if you don't understand that, they'll come along and say, oh, right, yeah, we're generating 500 MQLs every single month, but none of them becoming accounts. Therefore, it's sales fault. Sales will then say, oh, yes, well, we're getting those 500 accounts, but 500 MQLs, but none of them are actually becoming accounts because the product sucks. The product's not the right thing. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Why is this the case? So there's a lot of reasons why this can happen. Maybe there are issues with your product, why the people don't want to buy it or service. But normally it's due to the positioning of what they're selling and how they're selling it. And if that's not aligned up to what you're actually building, then that big gap is losing out a lot of business for your company. So, they could be focusing on the wrong sector. Like right now, last year it was blockchain. You send some stuff out about blockchain. Right now it's AI. So you send a lot of information about AI, but if your product doesn't offer any form of AI service or anything around that, then it's like, yeah, I've got 1,000 leads because I did an AI campaign, but obviously none of them converted into accounts because there's nothing that's relevant to what they've been advertising to try and get you. So I would say that's the very first thing you need to understand as a CTO. So you need to be able to talk the talk with the marketing and sales team to understand their work. Yeah, exactly. Because the last thing you want to do is be in a situation where one department's blaming your department for being unsuccessful. So you need to understand how they do it, what they're doing with it, and then also being able to stop them if they go too far. Because there's a lot of bad practice that happens inside this industry. I don't see it too often, essentially. Okay, so the examples of bad practice is cold calling. I hate cold calling. If you're focusing on CTOs, I don't want someone to ring me up and ask me, are you interested in my service? It's like, well, you should have sent me an email. If it was, I would have responded. If it's not, I'm not. And then you've got things like catfishing, which you see so much of on LinkedIn, So catfishing thing, Francis, is people will create a fake profile on LinkedIn, say, I'm an engineering manager with 20 years experience, just try and connect with you. So, and normally what they do is they're using some form of data. It's like, okay, so who gets the most connections? Engineering managers and CTOs. Normally people say yes to connection with. Okay, what also gets a lot of connections? 22-year-old blonde women. So therefore the profile pictures a 22-year-old blonde woman. And you look at the profile, it's all fake companies that you've never heard of. And, without even icons on the pictures. And therefore they're just trying to connect with you to start a conversation that way, and it's starting off the conversation on a bad foot. It's losing the trust straight away, because the person that is reaching out to them offering a service which you might be interested in, you say, yes, I'm interested in the service, and then suddenly you're talking to somebody else. So therefore that catfishing case there just loses the trust straight away, and you don't want to stay with them. So as a CTO, your responsibility is to identify what approaches they're using and flag the ones which are just like, don't do that, because the second they cotton on, you've lost the client anyway, because you've lost the trust. Like I say, not that many businesses do it, but you do see a lot of LinkedIn requests coming through to CTOs like ourselves like that. So you probably spot them quite easily, because I think it's quite common knowledge as an approach now. But I think it's important to at least flag that as a concern. Okay, then, so that's the sales marketing side, understanding what they're doing. Let's talk about the product side of the business. So as a business, it doesn't matter how great your technology is, no matter how great your engineering team is, the products that you build, if people aren't using them and don't know about them, you're going nowhere. You're not going to be able to pay the staff. You're going to have to lay people off. It's horrible.
Yeah.
The best companies have good KPIs that are actually based on the business goals. So therefore, it's amazing how many businesses don't actually do this. Normally, it's like their goal for the year is to build X, Y, and Z feature, and that doesn't mean anything. The right goal is we need to increase customers by 30%, or we need to reduce churn by 20%, or whatever the percentages are. And therefore, you have to start understanding, right, what do we do about actually achieving that? So if we want to increase the number of customers, yeah, we want to add new features. That's going to attract new customers. But you've got to understand what features they want. And yes, the sales team and the marketing team might be quite close to them, and they'll be talking about the problems they have. But as engineers, we should understand the product at a deeper level to be able to help with that conversation there, to understand what we should actually be building and lining up. So actually being able to put value against features of, if we build this feature, we expect every year to earn this much extra revenue. And therefore it becomes a lot easier for prioritization. So you need to be supporting the sales and marketing team, because if they're the closest ones to the customer and engineering team is completely cut off from the customer, then it's very hard to find that middle ground. Otherwise, you're a sales-led business, and sales are saying, I need this feature because this client said so. I need this feature because that client said so. And you're not addressing the market as a whole. So so that collaboration piece is very important to ensure the alignment. And then the next piece, which is what is more involved in my current job, but I've had it in other jobs as well, is the sales team members should actually feel comfortable bringing you to a client, putting you in front of a client when actually needed. And this is what
B2B.
Exactly. I don't know. Younger CTOs definitely are a little bit more scared of this, having to be the face in front of a client. CEOs normally a little bit more brash, a little bit more sales focused, so therefore they deal with it all. But if they haven't got that, then, someone else needs to fill that gap. And even if you do have that, the CTO offers a lot of value to the business. So you need to have that level of confidence. And just by having the CTO title, you automatically get confidence as well, which is something I've noticed a lot more of recently. So like the sales guys that I'm working with, when they first joined, I was training them up of exactly, what I want as a CTO and, what we're looking for. And they'll say one thing to a client and they won't really buy into it. And then I'll come along and say exactly the same thing. And because I've got the CTO title, they're like, excellent stuff. And the guys, I did tell them that. It's like, yeah, I'm sure you did. But, I'm coming with the CTO title. So therefore that just means I'm better than you. In a joking way, of course. But, the whole purpose is you have weight behind you. By being a CTO, you have, we have our own little personal reputation. So therefore, when we say something, it's more believable than a salesperson saying it, purely because we're closer to the engineering team, we're closer to what's going on inside the business, and therefore you're automatically given more trust. And obviously you don't want to break that trust, but there's value there.
Yeah, and I mean, you expect salespeople to tell you what is needed to close the deal, but when it's coming from the CTO, it's there's more, like you said, there's more trust there. And it's funny what you're saying earlier. I remember to me this was really critical in my experience at Heroku. Understanding what the sales, the problem the salespeople are facing. They're talking to the customers, and then they would tell, okay, our customers would really like to close with us, but they're missing X and that, and then that would be fed into the product cycle about how, because if you want to close deals, you need to find what are the pain points of the customer. So yeah, that's very important. What are other benefits that you see when you consider yourself as part of sales? Even if you're not in sales.
Sure. Sales is sort of in everything you do, a bit like politics. It's in everything there. So therefore, you need to understand how it works, and the better you are at part of it, the better it is. So obviously, it gives you growth opportunities. So if you are going for that promotion, if you are going for a new job, the growth opportunities there are better if you're able to sell yourself. Because I'm an agency, we have engineers that are very strong technically, and our clients interview them. And it's important that they can, come across well, because it's all about building the trusted relationship, because they're going to be working alongside their team. So therefore, it's important that they know how to interview, how to answer questions, and not just be a little bit short with their answers of just trying to say exactly what they think. They need to be able to phrase it in a way which is more understandable to someone that may not be as technical as them. And that just gives you more flexibility to do the things that you actually want to do. So like when I'm talking about, getting the right budget for your engineering team, you need to sell the rest of the business on X amount, if it's £1 million that you need to spend on some manufacturing or, changing some of your architecture, you can try and give them numbers, but more importantly is to show them what the value is going to be to the business. So that's what you're looking at. And increasing your connections just pays off long term as well. So, as you go to like these events, conferences like CTO Craft Con that's happening next week, the connections that you get from this is so valuable. So if you are looking for a new role and someone that already works in that company, there's already an in, they already know you. So therefore that gives you that little bit of an edge. So it's good for your future career prospects, but also how you actually manage your current job and your position inside a business, in my mind. And I think it's also worth pointing out that just because you can do some of these sales aspects doesn't mean that you don't need a sales team at all. I think it's important to identify that what my sales team does, I can only do one small part of it very well. Everything else I'm terrible at. So it's like, well, not terrible, but nowhere near as strong as they are. So, and I think that's very important to identify. So, I'm good at understanding the customer's needs, because most of the time the customer's exactly like me. I'm a CTO, other CTOs other things, or the same thing when we're selling a product. I'm trying to provide an event registration solution. My concern is, how do we actually do this without me having to really worry about it? This product gives you that. You have this support, you have this, SLA agreement in place to make sure that everything goes smoothly. That's the type of service or product that you're selling, and therefore we are able to do that final push sometimes when needed. But a lot of the times, if you've got a well-educated sales team and they understand what your point of view is already, they're able to perceive that and present that to the client without you even needing to be involved. So yes, I'm good at one small part, but the reach out, the cold emails, the building up the conversation, getting things going, that's hard for me, and obviously a waste of my time as well. So therefore, sales is still very important, even though I'm saying that we need to be heavily involved in this process.
And there's a scale thing, I mean, you have a sales team, they can reach out to more people than you can do alone. So yeah, makes sense. Okay, so how do I get started? I want to be better, to embrace sales. Where shall I start?
Sure. So it's a lot easier to talk to someone and sell something if you actually believe in the product or service that you're actually delivering, and hopefully the business that you're in, you do. It could even be some, even if you're in a really boring business where you're actually laying roadworks or something like that. Actually, one of my friends used to work on building highways. And when he was talking about it, super passionate about it. I mean, I think it's really hard to get passionate about concrete, but he was, and he was able to do that. I was just like, oh, wow, that's amazing. You actually feel excited talking to him about it. So firstly, believing in the product or service that you're offering, but most importantly is how you position what you actually do. So being able to understand what the customer's needs are. And I think this is the piece that normally at the engineering side struggles a little bit more. So it's not about just products. So I saw a great phrase this morning, actually. People don't buy products, they buy solutions to their problems. And it's just like that puts it perfectly. So yes, you can say we've got this XYZ feature, but that doesn't mean anything. It's like, what solution are you actually providing to them that actually makes their lives better? A bit like Steve Jobs when he used to say, you're not buying a phone, you're buying an experience. It's about what you can do with the product, not how the product works. And I think that's a bit of a mindset shift, considering as engineers, we think how to build a feature, how to deliver the feature, and therefore we just need to take that extra step back.
So would you say it's really about understanding what is the problem our solution is solving?
Yes, exactly. It's what your solution is going to give them, which is going to remove the problem. So if it's like an event tech solution where by having to deal with registrations, maybe they're doing it on an Excel spreadsheet and they're just ticking things off as going through. A lot of people, a lot of mistakes, all that stuff. Where if it's a scan QR code system, that's a feature. But the solution is a fast user experience where people just show their phone and go straight through. So therefore, you're able to get more people through the door at the start of the event. That's a solution we're giving you, to tackle a potential problem. It's about positioning the whole business, and you need to sort of understand that. And if you come into a business in a new, as a new CTO, it's worth spending the time with the sales team to actually understand what they're doing, how they sell, and being able to make sure that you are able to understand their point of view. And obviously it gives you an opportunity to question it, because obviously as a CTO from a different business, you just come in, you can give the same rejections that I'm sure the sales guys have heard all the time, and hear what their responses are. Oh, we don't want engineers from Europe. We want engineers sat next to me in my London office. It's like, look, that's absolutely your choice, but you are paying a premium to obviously have them in London, so therefore you are going to pay a lot more. And the availability of your type of engineers that you're looking for, there aren't many of them in London because the market's still quite heavy. You have the opportunity here to get them at a much better price, but still at the same level of competency that you're looking for, and you still get to manage them just like they would have, next to you. So it's been able to understand what the pushbacks are and being able to position the business in a way that you are able to present it in the best light. So yeah, with that, you want to join the sales and marketing calls. You want to be sitting in, especially if you're new to the business or if you've never actually touched on it before, just ask to sit in. Obviously, initially you just sit back, you watch, see how they pitch. I'm still in awe with our sales team, the way they start off conversations with clients, especially for the first time, just how they're able to disarm them, make them feel comfortable. I'm a little bit more introverted. I struggle with that initial introduction piece and getting the confidence and comfort there. So yeah, I love watching sales guys do that. It's an area I really need to try and keep on improving on. Then you also want them to pitch you, try and get you to buy the product. So therefore they learn off you. They learn what your pushbacks are. They learn about how to phrase the product or the way they're actually pitching to you differently to make sure that it is as best aligned. Because as CTO, normally if you're B2B, you're pitching to other CTOs in a lot of cases, especially if it's a technical product. So I'm sure most people on here are in that same situation. And obviously, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so just want to recap here. So be passionate about your product, understand the problem space, what the problem you're solving, hang out with the sales team to see how they pitch. Anything else?
As an overarching piece, everything you do, you need to do ethically and transparently. So, because again, you don't want to make an issue with the concept of sales being a bad word, especially inside your own business. So therefore, and as CTO, your reputation is highly important. You're on CTO Craft, you go to CTO Craft conference, people see you. If you're saying stuff and not delivering that, then, people talk. There's a community where we talk, and then obviously we don't talk horribly about people, but if there's an aspect of not having the trust there, that could be really bad. So, you need to make sure that you believe in what you say and not missell or misposition something because you're trying to be that salesman that's able to get the sale when it's not the right thing for you or the business.
So, first, let me remind folks that if you have questions for Glyn, use the Ask Question button, which is the little bubble with a question mark in, to send us your questions. But what you're saying here about the ethic, being transparent and truthful. So, I had that experience. I'm sure you had too, and I'm sure a lot of people here, where one problem with the sales is kind of promising things to the customer that the product is not doing yet. And that. So how do you handle this when what the product is not it doesn't do what the customer expects? So how should we handle these situations?
Sure. So firstly, you are supporting sales, but you're not a salesman. So as a CTO, or if you're in another engineering role but supporting sales, you don't have direct targets for hitting sales deadlines. So it's important to not try and put too much pressure on purely because you think, I'm trying to do a sales role here. I need to get this client to buy the product. I'm going to say what I need to. So firstly, that needs to just go away. That's not what you're here. You're here to help. Salespeople will bring you into conversations with clients because you're there to help them. And that's the mindset you need to have. You are trying to help them as much as possible. Obviously, you want your sales team to think like that as well. But, they've got incentives to try and get as many sales as possible. But obviously, they still need to make sure they're selling the right product to the client. So in your case, if the product doesn't fit what their needs are, it's important you're able to educate and explain what the product does or the service that you're offering does. and you're able to work with them to identify what it doesn't do. And then from that standpoint, you then have two options. You have one option of being able to find a different third-party service that can cover that gap. So, for example, inside our business, we don't offer much 24/7 support. So it's like we've got engineers working, but we want our engineers to finish at the end of the day, go home, sleep, be well rested, work the next morning. So our client says we want 24/7 support. It's like, okay, great. We can put them on call rotors like you see with Monzo and all these other businesses like to do that. But if you want dedicated 24/7 support, it's better to go use a 24/7 support agency for that. So therefore, we can help you with the development. And then we're showing other companies that exist or the services that exist that will fill the gap that they need. So it's important for you to hear these objections of what your product's missing. So one piece is like, right, you can use our products, and then this alongside, obviously you're now paying for an extra service as well, but it's clear and transparent from the start. Second piece is saying, right, actually, we want you to actually, we want to build this product. So many clients are asking for it. We see value. We can build this product. It's going to take 6 months, however long. But we believe it's going to increase the number of clients that are coming to us and staying with us. So therefore, maybe this will support the churn requirement too, because if they're having to use another third-party service, there's an issue that service might start adding the functionality that you have, and they no longer need you. So, it's about finding the right match there. So you don't need to give the hard sell. It's just important. If you've left a meeting where they don't understand exactly what you've done, that's where you failed. If you've left a meeting, they understand exactly what you've done and they still don't buy, then you still had success of explaining and giving your business the best chance. So I wouldn't be worried about having that pressure of trying to get that sale, because the business is struggling financially. We're trying to do this, that, and the other. We need the extra revenue coming in. If it's not the right product, they'll use it for a month and then cancel straight away. It's going to be a lot of headache, hassle. There's no value to the business. You lose out by mis-selling your product. So it's important that you actually cover that.
Okay. Any other tips on how to get customer to buy when the product is actually the right fit?
Sure. It's important to listen to what they actually need. Because essentially, that's what I find a lot. Essentially, if you go into a pitch, you're joining a salesperson with a pitch and just say, right, this is what we do. You spend half an hour, 45 minutes, literally just talking about your product, your business, what you do. And you haven't given them an opening to start talking about what their challenges are. You've got no idea if you're just wasting your breath here, because maybe they already have a product that does that. So certain clients want you to pitch because they're busy, they've got tight deadlines. So therefore, if you pitch and you want to keep it short, you want to keep it 5-10 minutes max, but you want to get into conversation. That's where the sales part is. You want to get them to say, right, does this product sound like it suits your purposes? No, I've got this issue. Oh, okay, well, actually, our product does suit that because of X, Y, Z. So normally products are quite complex. There's a lot of different parts to it, and you can customize it to their needs. So the sooner you know what their actual needs are, the best way is to actually be able to move forward with further conversations with them. Again, sales sometimes miss that. They're very used to their pitching. They have scripts that they like to follow. They don't like to get it interrupted. That's more the junior side of the sales side, of course. Obviously, when they're more experienced salespeople, they don't really work in that way. But when people first get started, they have scripts. They follow exactly what they're going to say, how they want to present it, because they can practice. Unfortunately, it is just experience. So with engineers that's coming into this industry, you need to get the experience by sitting alongside, see these great guys work, and then you're able to adapt the way that you behave to achieve that.
Cool. And we begin with sales is pervasive across all aspects of the business. It's not just with the customers. And it's not just a CTO. You want also probably your team to develop this. It's good for their career and so on. So as a CTO, how can we support our team to embrace sales? As part of their job.
Yeah. So I strongly believe that your engineering team should be involved, at least in some way, to support the sales team. So I completely agree that is a needed piece. Like I say, I was lucky very early on in my career, because running development wasn't as complicated. It could be one-man development teams, which what I was, with obviously other people also doing the same thing, like one person managing 3 or 4 clients. That exposure is really valuable, not only just to their own personal career, but also to the business, because they'll understand the point of view of the client better. And this is where normally a big gap is between engineering and the rest of the business, understanding what the client actually wants. So firstly, you need to explain to the people why this is important. A lot of people say, no, I'm an engineer, I code, I'm really good at coding, that's all I do. You know, I don't want to spend my time talking to people. If I wanted to talk to people, I wouldn't become an engineer. Life's not like that anymore, unfortunately. Being a good developer, even if you're the best developer in the world, coder, it probably means that you're only in the top 50, 60% of engineers if you haven't got the communication piece and the business understanding piece, because that's what's also needed as part of the role. It's not just code anymore, I'm afraid, guys. It's part of being able to have the conversations, understand what to build, to advise appropriately. And that's all the same thing as sales, really. If you're advising the client of how to do things, that is partly sales. So therefore, that's making them buy into the concept of this needs to be a small part of your role. Obviously, we don't want them to be spending all their time sitting in sales meetings and doing all that. They still need to be engineers, but they need to have exposure, limited exposure. So firstly, you want to get them sitting in on calls, see the magic that is sales that comes from the sales guys. You know, if you've got a good team, which most companies do, otherwise they wouldn't be successful, they're very good at doing the conversation. So let them start being exposed to that. And then you slowly start giving your engineers opportunities to actually get involved. Normally just in like client meetings, offering support, you know, they need support around them. A good sales guy will be able to manage an engineer that's inexperienced a little bit. If the engineer starts saying things they shouldn't, you know, explaining things in the wrong way, it will sort of cut them off and carry on. But, you know, just start being exposed to actually doing these conversations. Obviously, when I first started doing this, I was probably terrible. It's so long ago, I can't really remember, but I'm sure I was. And, you know, you'd have a sales guy joining me, and, you know, whenever the sales guy joined me, would always win the business. And like the one time he wasn't there was the one time the client said no. And he said, well, obviously the only difference is me as a sales guy. Then I was like, yeah. So I don't know, I can't remember what I was doing wrong there. Maybe there's a confidence piece. But yeah, essentially you need to be exposed, and it does take experience to build that up. And then once they're confident, the sales team should know when there's value to actually bringing them in. So I know obviously at the first time we're bringing them in just because we want to expose them to it. But like I say, we want the engineers to be coding or managing the teams or whatever they should be doing as a leader or as a CTO. So they should only be bringing you in when it's valuable. And they'll only do that when they actually trust your ability to be able to communicate effectively to a client and sort of have the sales piece. The sales team joke that I'm a salesman. And I said, no, I'm not. I'm in engineering. I always sort of push back against it a little bit, but in like a jokey way, just because I understand that sales is part of the role here. So you want the sales team to feel comfortable, say, right, look, this client's going to be really difficult. He's got big, heavy technical requirements. He's going to ask me a load of questions about architecture and how we're built. Yeah. I'm a sales guy. I can't really cover that. I want to use John. They grab John, and, you know, feel comfortable. Then, you know, the sales guy should know what questions they should be answering and what questions they shouldn't. So if the client's asking, you know, oh, what programming language should I build this in? That's not a sales guy's answer. That's a engineering guy's answer. So therefore, if the trust is with the sales team for the engineering team that you have, they'll bring them in, and therefore that's a really huge step in actually the cross collaboration between the sales and engineering teams.
Nice. Yeah, and do you consider a lot of I found a lot of value in engineering, just meeting customers, bringing customers to talk. I mean, a good first step for us was bringing in the customers and then understanding their pain points, and that was very inspiring to the engineers and getting a little bit of the business. That's less sales, but it's a good first introduction.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you got two ways. You got one on a new project where you're talking to clients directly in that sort of setting where the client's already bought into you as a customer, right, and you're helping them refine the solution. The other easy way is to actually get them working alongside customer support, because when clients come in with issues and problems, obviously as the engineer, you know exactly how to fix these things, and the support team are just documenting it. So therefore, they start to get understanding of the pain points. So it's less of what they're trying to build, is more of what this product doesn't do for them right now. So that's another way to expose them to it. Obviously, customer support is also, you need a certain mindset to be that type of person. It's not an easy job. You can have very horrible customers saying very horrible things to you, so therefore you need thick skin. So as long as there's, again, a safety net protection, someone supporting them there, but it does give them great exposure to the type of clients they're working with.
Another humbling experience for me as an engineer was sitting through user testing. You get a customer to use your product. It's got, oh wow, why are they doing that?
Yeah, prime example. Yeah, well, that's not how I built it. You're supposed to press that button. Yeah.
Okay. Random question here. Best opening comments to a new prospect. You said that was an edge for you. So what have you seen that is good?
It is. So again, so if you're at the CTO Craft conference next week, Vention are actually sponsoring. We've got a little booth right by the registration desk. It's not a plug, but if you just stand around them, you'll see some of our sales guys that'll be there. Lovely guys, and if you just walk close to one of them, they'll do an opening comment and introduction to you, and it's just amazing how they do it. So like I say, I struggle with this a lot more. So I need to know the environment, know what's going on, sort of understand what that type of person is to think of something. So if I know that you're on stage before, or I saw you do a talk previously, or seen something that you've done, so, I'd introduce with something I know about them. Where, the sales, that works for people like us. So therefore, if we're planned in for a meeting, we know there's that person, you can find them on LinkedIn, you can see they've posted something, you can reference that, as a way just to try and break the ice. True sales experts don't need that. They can just look at a guy and kick off straight away. You look like an Arsenal fan to me, or something like that. Something really random just to break the ice, get the conversation going. So yeah, that's one of the hardest areas I find inside the industry personally, to kick off that conversation in a cold manner like that. Normally, engineers don't need to do that because they're only getting brought into the sales process where they're already several ways through the pipeline already. But I think it's good to see and understand, because I think there's a lot of value to life by understanding how the pros in this area can actually do that type of piece.
Okay, thank you. So find something relatable that's for us, lay people.
That's yeah. It's
what we know about the person. Use it. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's my cheat code. Try and find something relatable to break the ice. Otherwise, I just feel a bit creepy going, "How are you? Yeah, weather's nice, isn't it?" And it just feels very standoffish. So yeah, you just need to have confidence, feel comfortable, and yeah, if you can find anything relatable, fantastic. But that's the reason why these conferences go on. It gives everyone a chance to meet, and you're in a safe environment, and everyone's a bit like you already. So therefore, you're able to normally kick off that conversation a little bit faster than you would do in another environment.
Nice. Reminder: if you have questions for Glyn, send them in. Another curveball for you. So, there are some people that are hard to read. There's kind of stone face, or maybe an engineer, another introverted engineer. What do you have any tips for how to enter the conversation in there?
Yeah, so that's always interesting, because we're sociable people. We want to see people at least respond in some way. Tell me you don't like it, or tell me you like it, then at least I know how to continue the conversation. If they're completely blank, stone face, it's like, I'm really not sure what to deal with here, and it can be a little bit unnerving. Again, professional salespeople are great at this, at like breaking the ice, getting crack a joke, get them to smile a little bit. It's hard to do that. It takes a lot of confidence and experience. So normally when it's like that, it's trying to get them to ask questions. That's the indicator. So the stone face, the hard to read, just ask. It's like, you don't want to say, "Oh, well, you're not paying attention," because that's like insulting, very aggressive towards them.
And we might be wrong.
So yeah, how are you finding this? Does this sound interesting to you? You can just ask and try to get them to start reacting. The more you get people like that talking, the more they relax. And as you say, they might be introverted, they might be less comfortable talking too much. So therefore, by asking questions and then trying to get involved, that's normally the only way that I can normally approach that. So it's difficult to do. Again, it takes experience of sitting alongside experts, I'd say, that are able to just disarm someone just like that, and you just see them lighten up, and they go, "Okay, yeah, I'll relax and not be so mean now." I don't have to be the Alan Sugar, "you're fired" mindset. I can be more of their real selves.
Nice. Yeah, and that's I'm hearing a theme in what you're saying. Hang out with the salespeople. You'll learn a lot. See how they and I personally, I always find sales folks fascinating. They're kind of they're made breed. From a different different breed. It's kind of, wow, so unlike my tech self. curveball for you, a real one here. You said, sales is you should be honest, transparent, but often there's little extension. We take liberty. So is there any occasion where it's fine, or it is valuable to maybe extend the truth a bit so that it is what they hear? Is that or that's always going to backfire?
I think it's always going to backfire. There's no need to ever lie, because you're mis-selling yourself, you're mis-selling the product and the service that you're offering. The way you phrase things can be very important, though. So, if I said, do you have any experience with coding with Go? And it's just like, you have got, you've played with it a weekend, but, you've not got production experience. If you say no, it's just like, okay, that's a really hard line. No, I've got no experience with that. Say, well, no, I've played around with multiple different languages before. I'm very good at Java and Python, and I'm really confident I could pick up Go. It's the phrasing to never tell a lie. You're not trying to hide the fact of something that you don't know. You can say, if you say, do you know what this is in AI? Actually, I haven't come across that. Tell me more. You can get them to try and give you more information. Or does this product do X? It's like, well, we can do something similar like this, but not exactly the way you say. The truth is the only thing you can really sell with. Not just purely for the reputation and what you're trying to represent yourself as, but also as to be able to keep a client happy. Because if you start telling fibs, start telling lies of what the product does or what the service does, they're going to realize very quickly and then move away from you. So therefore, There's no value to the business by being unaligned and untruthful with what you're doing. I mean, one thing that's interesting to touch on, every year or so, the marketing team will always ask me to have access to my LinkedIn account just to market on my behalf. So essentially, they want to write posts and let me post stuff up on the thing and stuff. And it's important for you to be able to say no to things that you don't feel comfortable with. So if anyone messages me on LinkedIn, the only person that sees it is me. If I post anything on LinkedIn, the only person that's written it is me. So therefore, that honesty and authenticness of yourself, being authentic, is vitally important. Obviously, marketing are always going to ask, because I've got a great network, I've got loads of connections. I'll have more exposure for any post that I give out. But they'll parts of the company will ask you for things that you don't feel are right or what you're comfortable with. You're happy to say no to. And if a sales guy is asking you to lie on your behalf, or marketing team asking you to lie on behalf, you say no as well. Because yes, they might want the win, or you could say that the product's coming down the pipeline, it's going to be in 3 months, but you need to be confident that you feel that it's actually a reasonable timeline that's actually going to happen. So therefore, you need to be honest and true to both yourself and the business.
Yes, that feels actually good. Thank you, Glyn. We're almost at the end of our time here, and before we close, do you have any training or reading that would be useful for the audience?
It's really hard, that, because like I say, the education sector doesn't really cover it. So as you go through the standard engineering path, like I did as a developer going through, there was no formal training. I don't even know if there were any courses on sales. There might be. I mean, from my perspective, I like to do a lot of reading. So, How to Win Friends and Influence People is a great example of that, of understanding how to be likable, how to be relatable to people. So that was a great book as one piece. Other thing, just reading around the subject a little bit, like Drive is an example of what people actually want. So therefore, it's all based around finances and what people actually, just having more money doesn't make you happier, isn't actually a drive and purpose. And everybody wants purpose. Therefore, you pick bits up all over the place that do help with the way that your own mind thinks about things and the way that you position your wording and your focus to anything you're trying to present to any client. So I don't have a long list of sales books. I do actually have 1 or 2 sales books upstairs, which are all around formulas and marketing stuff, which I haven't actually got around to reading yet, but I had great incentive to at one point. It's difficult. I think you learn more from on-the-job experience with this type of stuff. You need to see
hang out with the salespeople.
Exactly. You need to see them in action. You need to do it yourself. You need to be thrown in the deep end a little bit, but make sure you have a safety net for someone to come in and say, look, if I suddenly talk over you, it's because I'm doing it for a reason. And don't take it harshly. Don't take it like in a bad way. you learn and you talk to them afterwards. Say, so why did you jump in there? And then they'll go, oh, it's because of this. I know you were saying this, which is technically right, but it wasn't phrased or positioned correctly, so therefore it's not going to look good. These things do happen, and it's just experience to be able to build it up. So yeah, there's some reading things you can do out there, which is definitely going to improve the mindset, like never negotiate the difference. Like if you are talking with a client, that's another great book by Chris Voss. Never split the difference, it's called. Sorry, yeah,
right.
Not negotiate the difference. But yeah, so yeah, unfortunately, it's just experience and having people around you that you can rely upon. And as a CTO, technically you don't manage the sales team, but you can ask to be involved in a light level and say, look, I'm learning from you, and obviously you then teach them as well the things that you think they're getting wrong. And if they may disagree, and then you just ask them to prove it, and therefore they'll have to start measuring certain things, and then they can be proven for or against.
Nice. Well, I mean, I think that's a nice ending lesson. Learn from the salespeople, going out with them, and that's probably the best way to get started and improve the collaboration between sales and product development. We're at the end of our hour, so thank you very much, Glyn, for talking with us today. You can connect with Glyn and Vention after this event in the links that Nick shared a few moments ago. Thank you all for joining. There will be a next Byte session, which is on December 14th at 12:30 British time. That's PM. If you use that, and we'll explore the challenge of visibility in complex organization. There's a link for it, which I'm going to give you here in the chat as well. That's on December 14th. And for those who are going to CTO Craft Con next week, well, enjoy, and we'll see you another time. Thank you very much. Thank you, Glyn.
Thanks for having me, Francis.